Out of all the parts of speech, verbs are arguably the most fun because they are literally what you do, and they are crucial to any language. In fact, they are so important that one can't even have a complete sentence without them. If nouns are the Hollywood stars and starlets of the grammar world, then verbs are the cameras capturing their respective nouns' every action and giving them life. Without cameras, actors and actresses could be heard, sure, but they couldn't be seen or felt. Likewise, without verbs, nouns would go nowhere and do absolutely nothing, and no one likes a boring, flat noun. Most of us probably understand verbs are what we do, or don't do, but what exactly does this mean? Well, a verb will do one of three things. Describe an action, hence the whole verbs are what we do thing. Describe a state of being, think is, are, am, or help another verb convey its full meaning. Let's begin with everyone's favorite type of verb, action. Action verbs are exactly what they sound like. They are verbs that describe whatever their corresponding nouns are doing, and they are divided into two subcategories, transitive and intransitive. When one has a transitive verb, said verb is on the move. It is going from one place to another. In grammatical terms, this means that the action verb is going toward either a direct object or an indirect object. As a reminder, an object in a sentence is what or who the verb is being done to. In other words, a grammatical object is the recipient of an action. For additional clarification, let's look at the following examples. I bring my own lunch to school. First of all, let's pick out the verb in the sentence by assessing each word one by one. I is describing who is bringing the lunch. Is it a verb? Bring. I could be wrong, but I believe that one can bring something or someone. Is bring a verb in the sentence? My. To whom does the lunch belong to? Well, it belongs to me, you silly goose. Is my a verb? Own. Upon further inspection, it would appear that own is also describing lunch. Do you think own is a verb? Lunch. Can one lunch? Is it a verb? 2. Not to be confused with to or two. To is linking lunch and school. Does this make to a verb? School. One can certainly be schooled, but is school functioning as a verb in the sentence? So what do you think? Which of the aforementioned words best suits the role of the transitive action verb? If you said bring, congratulations. You are one smart cookie, though I don't see how a delicious sweet treat would ever need to be intelligent, but that is an entirely separate conversation. Bring is a verb because it is something that a person can do. It is an action. It is a transitive verb because something is being brought, i.e., lunch. Lunch is the direct object of bring. What do I bring? I bring lunch. Time for another example. You need a long vacation. In this sentence, need is the action verb. Needing is something that we do as living creatures. Who needs? You need. You are the one doing the needing. You is the subject of the verb, but what do you need? That's right, you need a vacation in which vacation is the direct object, i.e., the thing that you need. Because there is a direct object corresponding directly to the action verb, need is indeed functioning as a transitive verb in this example. One more example for the road. John received a long text message. First, let's answer the question of who or what is doing something. John is the subject because John is the one who performed an action at some point in the past. What action did John perform? John received something. What did he receive? He received a long text message, making message the direct object. This means that received is once again playing the part of an transitive verb. Next, we need to talk about intransitive action verbs. Unlike transitive verbs, intransitive verbs don't need a direct object nor an indirect object to accompany them. They are introverted verbs, preferring to do their work alone. Here are some examples of these independent action verbs. They ran for miles. Running is something we do, or rather something that we are capable of doing, so ran is certainly an action verb. However, make note of the fact that there is no one or nothing functioning as an object for the verb ran. Why? Well, ran is just fine on its own, making sense without needing additional assistance. In fact, we could simply say, they ran. No, it doesn't make for an exciting sentence, but grammatically speaking, it is a complete sentence. Instead, we have the prepositional phrase, for miles. Yes, this component follows the verb, but it isn't a noun, meaning that it cannot receive any action. For miles is simply providing additional information. Because there is no object for ran, it is an intransitive verb. She cried all night. Good or bad, most of us experience a plethora of emotions. Sometimes we cry because we are sad. Crying is the act of expelling tears in response to emotional distress. When we cry, we are doing something, performing an action. Crying is therefore an action verb. Just like the previous example, the verb in this sentence is not given to anything or anyone. The adverbial phrase all night is simply describing how long she cried and is therefore neither a direct object nor an indirect object. What does this all mean? Yep, cried is an intransitive verb. Now for our last example. It stormed. Short and direct, this sentence has all the necessary components to form a complete sentence. A subject and a verb. No other word is required here. It stormed. It's simple, but it gets the job done. Although one should never use only these types of sentences in their writing, they can be surprisingly impactful when used sparingly. In addition to having one action verb that describes what the subject is doing, it is also possible to have two or more words that join forces to form a single verb, one of which describes a highly specific action. Such a group is called a phrasal verb, and each one has a main action verb alongside a preposition or adverb. These special types of verbs can function as both transitive and intransitive verbs, based on how they are used. To clarify, phrasal verbs are unique in that each individual word comprising the phrasal verb means something different. When used together, however, everything changes. For more insight, let's look at some examples. Wake up. Waking is something that literally everyone does every single day, no exceptions. In order to start the day, we must first wake up. On its own, wake is simply an action verb, whereas up can be a preposition, adverb, or an adjective. When used together, however, an entirely new verb is formed, wake up. Whenever I wake up, I am extremely hungry. Notice how the phrasal verb wake up is not followed by any objects. If you recall, verbs that do not precede either a direct object or an indirect object are categorized as intransitive verbs, making wake up an intransitive phrasal verb. When a phrasal verb is intransitive, the components of the phrasal verb itself cannot be separated. In other words, we can't place up at a different place in the sentence like this. Whenever I wake, I am extremely up hungry. In no universe does this make sense. When functioning as a transitive verb, however, phrasal verbs can potentially be separated. Remember, transitive verbs are always followed by an object, direct or indirect. Let's use wake up as a transitive verb. Can you wake up your sister for school? Unlike before, wake up is now followed by a direct object, your sister, making it a transitive verb. Now, when the object is not a pronoun, you can separate the phrasal verb, which would place the object in the middle, like so. Can you wake your sister up for school? Or you can leave the components together. However, when a pronoun, for example, I, him, he, it, etc., is the object, the phrasal verb must be separated, positioning the pronoun directly in the middle of the components. For example, can you wake her up for school? We cannot say, can you wake up her for school? Go ahead, try and say that sentence aloud. It sounds all kinds of wrong. Let's look at a couple more phrasal verbs. Look after. Look is a simple action verb, while after can be a preposition, adverb, or conjunction, depending on where it is placed. By combining these two words, the phrasal verb look after is formed, and this one cannot be separated. He needs someone to look after his pets while he is out of town. Once again, this phrasal verb is immediately followed by an object, making it a transitive phrasal verb. However, the word order cannot change. For example, it would be woefully incorrect to say, he needs someone to look his pets after while he is out of town. I cannot stress how wrong this would be. Do not do it, please. One last example. Throw away. By itself, the word throw is a straightforward action verb. What do you do with a ball? Why, you throw it, of course. Away, on the other hand, functions as an adverb. What do you do with trash? Well, you may throw it in the trash can, but ultimately, you throw trash away. In other words, you get rid of it. You make it disappear. This phrasal verb is transitive because one has to throw something away, and it can also be separated or unseparated. Once again, if the object is not a pronoun, you have the choice. For example, I need to throw away my old clothes, or I need to throw my old clothes away. However, the phrasal verb must be separated if the object is a pronoun. I need to throw them away. For the next category of verbs, we have auxiliary, aka helping verbs. As their name would suggest, these verbs assist main action verbs on their journey if and when the action verb experiences obstacles. It's true, even the flashiest of action verbs sometimes need a little help. There are some words in the English language that function only as helping verbs, and some examples include can. One of the most frequently used helping verbs, can, is typically seen accompanying an action verb, and together, the two verbs convey an opportunity to do something. In addition, can is commonly used alongside an action verb to request permission or express an extent of possibility or impossibility. Can you cook dinner tonight? In this sentence, notice how we have two verbs, can and cook. Cook is the main action verb because cooking is something you do. Although can is also a verb, you can't can. Weird, I know, which is why it is a helping verb. If we were to remove can from the sentence, the meaning would completely change. Instead of asking someone a question regarding their willingness or ability to cook at a certain time of day, we would instead be making the following statement: you cook dinner tonight. This is why helping verbs are just as crucial as action verbs. Could. Could conveys essentially the same idea as can, though it is often used as the past tense version of can, or as a way to express confidence in something happening in the future if certain conditions are met. For example, if I had enough money, I could buy this beautiful dress. In this sentence, could is used rather than can because we are talking about a hypothetical scenario, not a practical one. In other words, I am stating what I would need to buy the dress, but I don't have the means to obtain it. Should is a helping verb that typically conveys the following sentiment: something must be done, But will it get done? Who knows? Maybe. I don't know. On the other hand, it can also be used to ask someone if doing something or not doing something is advised, welcome, preferred, etc. For example, for my vacation, should I go to the beach or the mountains? In this sentence, should is used in conjunction with the action verb go in order to ask someone their opinion regarding two choices, the beach and the mountains. And now for our last category of verbs, we have linking verbs. These verbs do not convey a specific action or lack thereof. Instead, they are used to connect a subject to a noun or adjective. Often, you will notice that be verbs, for example, am, was, were, is, so on, function as linking verbs because they are the only verb in the sentence. It is important to note, however, that these so-called be verbs can also function as helping verbs. If they are accompanying an action verb, they are acting as an auxiliary verb rather than a linking verb. Let's look at some examples. He is a loving husband to his wife of many years. In this example, we don't have an action verb because, well, nothing is really happening, is it? Instead of the subject, husband, performing an action, he is simply being. In other words, we are describing a trait that the husband has instead of something he is doing. For comparison, let's look at an example in which the be verb is functioning as a helping verb rather than a linking verb. The loving husband is cooking a meal for his wife of many years. Now we have an action verb, cooking, and in order to convey that the cooking of the meal is in fact happening right now, the word is precedes cooking, making it a helping verb. For the following example, we are going to use a verb that is always a linking verb. She seemed happy. The verb seem is not an action verb because one cannot seem. However, it is still a verb because it is expressing a state of being. In this instance, we are describing a girl or a woman using the adjective happy. Even some action verbs can also function as linking verbs. For example, it suddenly appeared. Here we have only one verb, appeared, and it is describing something manifesting out of the blue. Therefore, appeared is playing the role of action verb in this sentence. Despite the traumatic crash, she appeared fine. Still a verb, appeared is no longer describing an action. Rather, it is describing the state of someone's physical appearance, linking the subject, she, to an adjective, fine.